Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another third/fourth stimulus check unemployment benefits extension update. So today is going to be a relatively interesting video where I really just want to talk a little bit about whatever actually ended up happening in a lot of the different states when it comes to unemployment. Because as most of you guys know is that when Biden originally came out to speak about his plans with unemployment, he originally what he wanted was basically for a lot of states to essentially use their funds in order to try to fund their own individual unemployment programs and try to extend it on their own. But as we probably already know by now is that the hard news is that most states have pretty much remained relatively quiet. Now we do have maybe one relatively great/promising news in the sense that there is now essentially one state, or rather one representative in one state, that is now trying to create their own brand new proposal. So this is not related to the AOC bill. I do have a video that talks all about the AOC bill, which essentially, if you guys haven't checked it, I'll definitely put it at the end screen. It essentially talks about a brand new bill that just came out, and this is an actual bill that has been drafted or put into writing that is essentially hoping to extend unemployment on the federal level, so as in all 50 states. But today's new proposal is really about something that's going on in one state. However, I will talk a little bit about what's been going on with the state programs in all of the other states, so hopefully there's something to maybe relate to even if you are not from that particular state. And then pretty much, as mentioned, is pretty much explaining what really happened with a lot of the state programs. So we're gonna get started right away, but as always, maybe real fast before we begin, remember to smash the like button because it's always greatly appreciated. If you enjoy videos similar to this, consider subscribing and hitting the bell for just other kinds of updates and also finance topics, especially as we're on the final stretch. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts about honestly just really anything, or as always, any particular information that you might have about your particular state. So with that being said, let's get this video started right now. So to maybe start off with maybe one relatively promising news is that there is now officially one representative in one state that is hoping now to create a brand new proposal that he's hoping to release soon, and his name is pretty much Austin Davis. And what's going on is that he is now essentially trying to create a brand new proposal /fourth unemployment proposal in order to now try to extend unemployment in his particular state. And this state happens to be the state of Pennsylvania. Now the story is that because this proposal has not actually physically been written, he's trying to put it together. We don't have the actual official text yet, but at least what we do know is that there's some level of intention. So they're making progress. Now with that being said is I will say is that even if you are from a different state, it is believed right now, again, because it hasn't existed yet, we can't fully confirm it, but it is believed right now is that there may be several other states that may now be also trying to create their own individual proposal. Even if it's not necessarily through unemployment, it could potentially be coming in stimulus checks. For example, as we know is that in California, they did approve their own Golden State stimulus, and they did also expand eligibility. So this was something that a lot of people were able to get. So not just like a very niche specific group of people, but actually many people were able to physically qualify for it. So even if you happen to be in a lot of the other states, the hope is maybe something can come over, whether this is the form of more unemployment or at the very least state stimulus checks. But I think that's the big thing to really take in for now. Now, I do maybe want to just now talk a little bit about what really ended up happening in a lot of the states that sadly ended unemployment, or why they never ended up extending it in its full amount, as you know, since Biden basically gave the power to a lot of states to decide. So there are actually a couple reasons or things about what really ended up happening. The first is that if you come from a state where they sadly ended unemployment early, or you came from a state that thankfully was able to extend unemployment throughout, it is very possible that there are also a lot of states that pretty much just ended up deciding that they just didn't want to do another unemployment, exactly because of the reason, because it was believed at that time period, even though, again, as we've mentioned, is that research shows that it's kind of not necessarily been working in that way, but it was certainly believed at that time is that they were trying to end unemployment, because by doing so, it would be able to sway a lot of workers to come back. Of course, most of the red states decided to push it early and do it earlier than usual, but there were a lot of blue states, especially a lot of swing states that might have been like relatively right in the middle, that ended up deciding that because of that reason, they would pretty much end the unemployment program in order to get as many people to get back on. Now, the second thing that really ended up happening, and this is really just for insight to certain states, is that it was recently revealed that essentially in several states, the reason that they never ended up actually extending the unemployment further was because they ended up finding out that even though they had the money to physically put up for it, what ended up happening is that they ended up deciding, they just never released it to public at that time until relatively recently, that they essentially wanted to take that money, even though they had the money to extend unemployment, they ended up deciding that they wanted to take that money and instead use it to fund a lot of the other programs. Now, what do these other programs involve? It's a little bit of everything. It just really depends on your state. Obviously, we do know about the Taliban story and all that, is that there were some states that maybe wanted to try to use their own money in order to fund their own personal agenda. Of course, you know, a lot of that stuff, some of it also happened on the federal level, but there were many states that wanted to kind of fund their agenda. Now, they did say is that there is a lot of belief that several states may be trying to use some of their funding in order to do programs, just not necessarily unemployment. So, for example, it is believed by a lot of people that California may be doing another, so as in you guys have probably heard about the state stimulus package, they may be trying to do another stimulus package to try to create, let's just say, government programs to try to help the people. So whether it's in unemployment or in stimulus checks or in rental assistance, that one just really varies across state. But the bottom line really is that it just turns out that they ended up wanting to use the money for a lot of other stuff. And then once they did, or once they budgeted that particular set amount of money for what they actually ended up wanting to do, they ended up realizing in several states that they physically ended up not having enough money anymore to basically do unemployment, or rather that they wanted to use that to do the other stuff, and that's really what ended up happening. And then really the last thing I think that really ended up happening to why some states actually ended, and this one actually is a little bit more of an interesting story, but there were actually several states that what they ended up doing is that they wanted to use that money, and they did actually do something to support unemployment. They didn't actually end up extending the unemployment longer, but why they ended up doing that is because they ended up wanting to use that money to physically try to upgrade and improve the unemployment system. So this was actually less about trying to extend unemployment longer, but it was a lot more about trying to make their unemployment system just in general better. Because as most people know, and feel free to share if you guys had any particular stories throughout all of this, but there were many states that even when they did actually extend unemployment, there were people that physically struggled to get onto the unemployment program or had pauses in their unemployment program, whether this was because something related to like a state reason, a server reason, a technical difficulty, ID checks, identity stuff, basically all sorts of different reasons. I think it's very fair to say is that the unemployment system that's going on is relatively old. So some of these states ended up wanting to use that money, and instead of trying to extend unemployment, they wanted to essentially upgrade unemployment, to essentially just make it a better system. So hopefully that pretty much kind of shares what's been going on with it, because I do wanted to kind of share insight, because many people were kind of wondering, well, you know, whatever ended up happening, because it, you know, they said states had money, but then are they really going to be using the unemployment? And the answer right now is that we don't fully know, but as of this time, this is what really ended up happening to a lot of the money that they could have used in order to do more unemployment. But we at least have one state that finally has a proposal, or that's going to be coming out with the proposal. We have hope that maybe other states will potentially follow. And at the end of the day, I think is that we at least have some insight about what's physically happening. So as always, if you guys found that relatively insightful, maybe consider smashing the like button, consider subscribing and hitting the bell if you guys haven't done so for similar videos. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts about honestly just really anything. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, have a great start to the new week if you're watching this on release date, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.